Have you ever found yourself waiting by your phone, rehearsing what to say, carefully choosing words just to feel worthy of someone's attention? Have you ever apologized for things that were not your fault, made yourself smaller, quieter, less just so someone would stay? If you have, I want you to stop for a moment. Because what you experienced was not love. It was not even close. Carl Jung, one of the most profound minds in the history of human psychology, spent decades studying why human beings suffer in relationships, not because they are weak, not because they are unworthy, but because they have never been introduced to the most important person they will ever meet, themselves. And today, this video is going to change the way you see love, connection, and the quiet desperation that makes us beg for what should have been freely given. Stay with me, because what Jung discovered about love, the self, and the people we attract, is something no one ever taught you in school. But it may be the most important thing you ever hear. We live in a world that has romanticized suffering. Songs tell us that love is supposed to hurt. Films show us that chasing someone who pulls away is passion. Social media rewards those who perform their heartbreak publicly, collecting sympathy like currency. But Jung saw through all of it. He understood that the relationships we enter, the people we chase, the ones we beg, the ones we cannot seem to leave even when they destroy us, are not random. They are not bad luck. They are not fate in the way we like to imagine. They are mirrors. Every person you have ever been drawn to, every connection that left you hollow, every relationship where you gave everything and received silence in return, each one was a psychological projection, a message from your unconscious mind, written in the language of longing. Jung called this the process of individuation, the lifelong journey toward becoming whole. And he believed, with absolute conviction, that until you do the inner work of becoming whole, you will continue to attract people who reflect your incompleteness back to you. The person who requires you to beg is not a villain. They are a teacher, a painful, costly teacher, but a teacher nonetheless. And the person who is truly meant for you, they will never ask you to shrink. They will never require your desperation as proof of your love. But to understand why, we must go deeper. Much deeper. The anima, the animus, and the illusion of the perfect partner. Jung introduced two of the most powerful concepts in all of relationship. Psychology, the anima, and the animus. The anima is the feminine psychological energy that lives within every man. The animus is the masculine psychological energy that lives within every woman. These are not simply metaphors. Jung believed these were living forces within the unconscious mind, ancient, powerful, and largely unknown to the person who carries them. Here is where it becomes dangerous. When a person has not done the work of understanding their own inner anima or animus, they project it outward. They see it in another human being. They look across a room and feel an overwhelming, inexplicable pull towards someone, and they call it love at first sight. But Jung would ask a different question. He would ask, are you falling in love with that person, or are you falling in love with the image of your own unconscious projected onto them? Think about it carefully. How many times have you fallen intensely for someone, only to discover months later, years later, that the person you thought they were never truly existed, that you had been in love with a version of them that lived entirely inside your own mind? This is projection. And it is the foundation of almost every relationship where begging occurs. Because when you have projected your inner ideal onto another person, you will do anything to keep that projection alive. You will ignore red flags. You will excuse cruelty. You will beg and apologize and make yourself small, because losing them feels like losing a part of yourself. And in a way, it is, because you never truly separated the two. The shadow and the people we cannot leave. Now we must talk about something even more uncomfortable. Jung's concept of the shadow. The shadow is everything you have hidden about yourself. Every quality you were told was wrong, weak, or shameful. The anger you suppressed. The neediness you were taught to disguise. The grief you never processed. The parts of yourself you abandoned in childhood just to be accepted. The shadow does not disappear when you ignore it. It goes underground. It waits. And then it chooses your relationships for you. This is why intelligent people stay in relationships that diminish them. This is why strong people beg for the attention of those who are emotionally unavailable. It is not weakness. It is the shadow, seeking resolution for old wounds through the theater of modern love. Consider this. A child who grew up with a parent who was inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, sometimes present, sometimes completely absent, learns something devastating at a neurological level. They learn that love is uncertain, that affection must be earned, that connection is something you fight for, not something you simply receive. And then that child becomes an adult. And they walk into the world carrying that blueprint in their unconscious mind. And they are drawn, almost magnetically, to partners who recreate that same dynamic. Partners who are sometimes warm, sometimes cold, sometimes present, sometimes gone, not because they enjoy suffering, but because the nervous system recognizes that pattern as love. Jung called this the repetition of the wound. The shadow, unexamined, will always lead you back to the same classroom. Different faces, same lesson. And here is the critical insight. The person who requires you to beg is almost never doing it consciously. They are not a predator calculating your destruction. More often, they are simply someone whose own shadow has never been examined, someone whose own wounds make them incapable of offering the consistent, unconditional presence that love actually requires. Two unexamined shadows do not create love. They create a cycle of pain that both people mistake for intensity. The persona, the mask, that attracts the wrong people. There is another layer we must examine. Jung called it the persona. It is the mask we wear for the world, the version of ourselves we construct to be acceptable, admirable, desirable. And in the modern world, in the age of social media, digital identity, and curated self-presentation, the persona has never been more powerful or more dangerous. Think about who you become when you are trying to attract someone you deeply want. You become strategic. You perform confidence you do not feel. You hide your needs. You present the most polished version of yourself, carefully removing anything that might make you seem too much, too sensitive, too real. And here is the tragedy. When you win someone's affection through your persona, through the mask, you have not won their love. You have won their attraction to a fiction. And you will spend the entire relationship exhausted, maintaining that fiction, terrified that if they ever see the real you, they will leave. That fear, that constant lower-level terror of being truly seen, is where the begging begins. You beg because somewhere beneath the surface, you believe that if they knew who you actually were, they would not stay. So you compensate. You overgive. You tolerate what you should not tolerate. You silence your needs because your needs feel like liabilities. Jung's answer to this was radical and simple. Remove the mask, not in one reckless moment of forced vulnerability, but gradually, intentionally, through the process of individuation, learning to know yourself so completely, so honestly, that you no longer need another person's approval to feel real. Because here is what happens when you do that work. The people who are only attracted to your mask will leave, and that will feel like loss. But what it actually is clarity. And then, slowly, something different begins to happen. Individuation, and the love that requires nothing from you. Jung believed that the purpose of human life was individuation, becoming fully, authentically, completely yourself. Not the self your parents wanted, not the self your culture approved of, not the self carefully constructed to attract the most desirable partner, but the self that exists beneath all of that. The self that was present before the world told you who to be. And he made an observation that sounds almost unbelievable until you experienced it yourself. When a person reaches a sufficient degree of individuation, when they have done genuine work on their shadow, integrated their anima or animus, and released the persona, the quality of people they attract changes entirely. Not because they have become more attractive in a conventional sense, but because they have become coherent. They have become whole. And wholeness carries a frequency that is fundamentally different from need. Think about the people in your life who seem to effortlessly attract love, loyalty, and deep connection. Not the people who are simply beautiful or successful, but the ones who seem genuinely settled within themselves. The ones who do not chase. The ones who do not perform. The ones who are simply, quietly, fully present. You are drawn to them without fully understanding why. Jung would tell you why. It is because they are not projecting their incompleteness onto you. They are not looking at you as a solution to their internal wound. They are encountering you as a full person, meeting another full person, and that is extraordinarily rare, and extraordinarily magnetic. The person who is meant for you will not require your begging because they are not looking for your desperation as validation of their worth. They are whole enough to recognize wholeness in you, and they are secure enough to love without requiring your diminishment as the price of their presence. How to know the difference? So, how do you know? How do you distinguish between a connection that is genuine and one that is simply a shadow projection dressed in the language of destiny? Jung gives us several markers. The first is ease, not the absence of challenge. Real relationships are always challenging in the sense that they require growth, but ease in the sense that you do not feel like you are constantly fighting for your right to exist within the relationship. You do not feel like you are one wrong word away from losing everything. The second is expansion. The right person does not make you smaller. They do not require you to edit yourself for their comfort. In their presence, you feel more capable, more clear, more fully yourself, not less. The third is consistency. The shadow is attracted to inconsistency because inconsistency recreates the wound. But the person meant for you shows up with a steadiness that does not require you to perform or chase. Their care is not a reward you must earn. It is simply present. And the fourth, perhaps the most important, is that they do not ask you to abandon yourself for them. When someone truly loves you, they love the truth of you, and the truth of you includes your needs, your boundaries, your history, your complexity. A person who requires you to beg is, consciously or not, asking you to betray yourself for their comfort. The person meant for you will never ask that, because they understand, perhaps intuitively, perhaps through their own inner work, that a love built on your self-betrayal is not love. It is ownership, reflection, and practical takeaways. So where does this leave you? If you have been in relationships where you begged, where you chased, over-explained, silenced yourself, or made yourself smaller, I want you to sit with one question. Not, what is wrong with me? But, what wound was I trying to heal through that person? Because that question will take you somewhere real. It will take you into the territory Jung called the most important journey a human being can make, the journey inward. Begin to notice your projections. When you feel an overwhelming, instant pull towards someone, pause. Ask yourself honestly, am I seeing them, or am I seeing the image of something I need? Begin to examine your shadow. The qualities you most despise in the people who have hurt you are often, not always, but often aspects of yourself that you have buried. The work is not comfortable, but it is liberating in a way nothing external ever will be. Release the persona in safe spaces. Begin to practice being seen as you actually are in therapy, in trusted friendships, in your private journals. The more comfortable you become with your own truth, the less you will need another person's approval to feel worthy. And finally, practice wholeness before partnership. Not because you must be perfect before you deserve love, but because the love you attract when you are rooted in yourself is categorically different from the love you attract when you are searching for someone to complete you. Jung said it plainly. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But transformation requires two substances that are real. Not to projections, not to masks. To real people, willing to be seen. There is a version of love that you have never experienced if you have spent your life chasing people who required your desperation. It is quieter than what you were taught to want. It does not arrive with the overwhelming force of projection. It does not feel like obsession or hunger, or the terrifying high of someone finally choosing you after weeks of silence. It feels like recognition, like coming home to a place you did not know you had been missing. Jung spent his life studying the human psyche because he believed deeply, with every intellectual and spiritual resource he possessed, that the human being is capable of becoming whole, that the suffering we carry is not our destiny, that the wounds we repeat are not permanent sentences. But wholeness requires work. It requires honesty. It requires the willingness to stop looking outward for what can only be found within. The person who is meant for you is not hiding. They are not playing games. They are not making you earn what should be freely given. But they can only find you when you have found yourself first. Do the work, not for them, for you. Because you were never supposed to beg for love. You were supposed to become someone who no longer needs to.